Hi, Will.
Hey, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Doing all right.
Great. Do you know that the world is, we could split it into two parts?
What's that?
Ones who believe and use the NIST, and the others that believe and use the CIS version 8.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Or there's the both, or the number one answer in security. It depends.
Yeah, yeah. So in this episode, we're going to talk about the NIST version 8 and the implementation groups. And so, can you can you tell us maybe a quick introduction to CIS version 8?
Sure. So CIS, the Center for Internet Security has basically created. It used to be the CIS 20. Now it's the CIS 18. But essentially, it was a framework to say here are the essential cybersecurity controls that a company should follow, and give guidance around those controls, and give that path from, hey, we're just starting out in security, to we have a full security program that we've had for years, and we're tracking maturity. So it's a good framework for beginners all the way up to ongoing programs.
So for beginners, I guess they don't have to implement all what is written in the CIS version 8, and there is some implementation group. So what is the first step in CIS? Is it called the implementation group 1?
It is. So CIS, they designed it so there's three implementation groups, and the idea is implementation group one is what CIS considers essential cyber hygiene. So it is the starting point that if you do nothing else, do implementation group one. And so that is essential cyber hygiene for every business, and it's something that that I even start my clients with. Is you've got to have implementation group one, and we view that almost as a non-negotiable. If we're doing any sort of security, this is the baseline that we have to start from, and move from there.
Can you give some examples of implementation group 1 controls?
Sure. Well, so in CIS, I would say every category. So out of all 18 controls, there is something in implementation group one, except for probably two of them, two or three. But basic cyber security awareness training, antivirus, email security, um, separate user accounts, for each user. So it's really the basics that um, can be built upon. But I think there's probably we talk about the controls being 18, but then there's safeguards, which are safeguards, they're sub controls, but essentially it starts breaking it out and getting bigger. But those are what you add on to as you go through the implementation groups.
Yeah, so this is the implementation group 1. So let's say that I'm a new company to cybersecurity, and I create a program for implementing this implementation group 1, and it takes me, I don't know, half a year to do that. What is the next step?
So the next step would actually be move into implementation group two. So if you have one complete and it's taken you 6 months or a year, or 2 years, I mean, but essentially, if you have implementation group one finished, the next step is to go directly into two. Don't try jump into three, because there's actually some prerequisites,
Mhm.
and so you can't effectively move all the way to three without having some of the foundation that was built in two and one.
And if you take the different types of companies, so there are small companies, big companies, companies that dealing with sensitive data, and other companies that don't, um, does everybody should fulfill all implementation groups, or If I'm company from a certain type, I could stop with implementation group 2 or even 1.
So I would say always start with one, and that could easily, if you're already doing some security, that might be a quick check. Hey, we've already got this in place. As you start getting into group two, that's where it'll start being a lot more program specific, or mapping, or these different things that we do to improve that maturity. um, and it'll expand on one. So I don't think anyone would jump directly into two or directly into three. It's definitely a progression. When you're doing a CIS assessment, like if you use the tool, from CIS or even within Synomi, you get everything. You can see all of them. And so, but the great thing, especially within the Synomi platform, is we can filter by those implementation groups. And so, we go to IG1, we get those complete or marked off, and then move into two, instead of showing, we have all of these sub controls for CIS, and we're only 20% finished. Well, that's okay. You may be 100% finished with implementation group one. And so it'll be moving it further and further into group three. But I don't think everyone needs group three. It really becomes a question of risk. What does your business do? Do I think they're all great? Absolutely. But small companies may not need everything in group two or three. It just really comes down to risk.
Yeah. So, so risk is important, and I guess on some companies maybe would like to move from the CIS implementation group 1 or 2 to NIST because it's talk about risks more than specific controls.
It does, yeah, and really, it's the goals are different, right? So, CIS is, here is the controls and safeguards, and here's a path to cyber hygiene. NIST looks a little bit differently, but the problem with, I would say the problem with NIST is there's a document for everything, right? We can look at, what NIST do we need to follow. So for most small businesses, or even larger businesses that I've worked with, the NIST CSF, I would say, is kind of the closest equivalent to what CIS is doing, but there are a lot more process in that risk and governance. So there is a piece of that in CIS, but it definitely gets expanded over in the NIST framework.
Yeah, so like always, it's good to take the best from the CIS and the best from the NIST CSF, and
I,
to
Absolutely. I've always said the great thing about frameworks is there's always one to choose from. And so, but the best advice is pick one and start with it, and work through it. So if you start with CIS, start with implementation group one and go through it. If you make it all the way to three, great. But let's say you have all of CIS finished and you're all the way to three, and you're like, well, what do we do now? Well, then that's where you can start introducing these other frameworks and see, are there gaps that maybe
Mhm.
CIS didn't include, that these other frameworks now fill in some of those gaps.
Yeah. So I guess what we can agree that the starting point for any company could be the CIS version 8 implementation group 1.
Yeah,
Then to be better mature, you could go to implementation group 2 or maybe discuss other frameworks, but implementation group 1, this is the basic and every company should start with that. And it makes sense to continue to version 2, or sorry, to implementation group 2 after implementation group 1 to do maybe not all the implementation group 2, only the things that are relevant to the company, and to progress in cybersecurity. And I guess this is what matters, to pick at least one framework and to do what the framework says in order to mature your cybersecurity program.
Absolutely. And the good thing is I would say you can't go wrong, right? So if you start with CIS and then move to NIST, or you start with NIST and also measure CIS, ultimately, these frameworks are designed, and there's a lot of cross mapping. We do that with within Synomi. You've got that cross mapping where if I'm doing security awareness training and check that box in CIS, I can also go over to NIST and check that box in NIST.
Yeah.
So really, it's picking a framework and then expanding as the business needs. If the business takes credit cards, now we've got to look at PCI. Even if we outsource that to Stripe, PayPal, or any of those, we're still under PCI. So but each of these frameworks, there's a mapping to map it to CIS or to NIST, or both. And so really, it's that logical progression as you're moving a cybersecurity program from start to finish.
Great. So thank you, Will. I guess you already started to implement implementation group 4.
Well, I would say if you want four, you won't find it in CIS, but NIST definitely has, especially with the new CSF, what they call tiers. So they introduced tier 4, which is adaptive. So there's definitely, if you've got to have implementation group 4, you won't find it in CIS, but you will find it in NIST.
Yeah, so there are enough controls for everyone. So if you want more controls for cybersecurity, you could find it.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I would say the biggest ones out there are going to be the ISO 27000 or the NIST 853. I mean, there's always more controls.
yeah. Okay, Will, it was great talking with you. Have a great day.
You too, and hopefully you've got implementation group 1 done, and I'm going to go work with some of my other small businesses and get them going.
Great, great. Good luck.
All right, thanks.
Bye bye.